The threat for strong tornadoes also present. Those can quickly turn into long-track, violent tornadoes, as we saw in Barnesdall. Areas across southern Missouri and east into Kentucky and Tennessee, they're under the threat zone. Big cities, you're looking at them live. Memphis, Nashville, St. Louis, even Louisville, they're in the danger zone today. And we consider this system different energy, but same pattern. We've got the same setup that we had on Monday. And so the environment's going to be there, but we've got a different piece of energy moving out of the west. We've got that enhancement of the jet. That's going to add for some additional development and strengthening of this area of low pressure, which is not going to be overly strong, but things are already juiced up. We've had some storms that have been developing in western Missouri, eastern Kansas. These were not picked up. Matthew Blue just mentioned it to us, Marissa. They weren't picked up by some of the higher res models that we use. So the question is, what does that do later on? And these things are racing. They're producing ping pong ball size hail, and they're just south of 70, about to move through Sedalia, Cole Camp, and they're moving toward Columbia, Missouri. That's the environment we have today, and it's been admitted by multiple National Weather Service offices. It's a complicated, challenging forecast, but it's a serious one today.
There's a lot of variables at play, and oftentimes models can have a difficult time picking up on some of the intricacies of the forecast.
Right.
One of the examples being the low-level jet influence and how that can also amplify the storm chances. That's when being a meteorologist comes in handy, right?
Yeah.
But also just keeping up with the forecast, because it's going to be a nowcasting thing, I think, as we get further into the day, given the variables. Now, we do have the severe thunderstorm watch. I think one of the key things to remember today, there could be multiple rounds of storms depending on where you are. For this severe thunderstorm watch, this is going to go till 2 o'clock local time. It includes the area that we just showed you on the radar. And by the way, look at the dark clouds coming out of Jefferson City, Missouri there. But you'll notice this goes towards I-70 into Columbia and then further south towards I-44, including Springfield. So within this, certainly you could have some very strong winds and some heavy rain and even some hail. But the warm sector in all, Stephen, this is a massive area, and it's really this entire area where we're looking at that potential for damaging winds, hailstones that could be large to very large, but also the threat for tornadoes.
Yep. That 2 p.m. is when the severe thunderstorm watch expires, you'd said. That one is watched for, I was just looking at the text, 3 inches in diameter possibly for some of those hailstones with what we have moving through this morning, because you'll sometimes get those specific parameters. So with that watch, as they move through Missouri, that's the environment that we'll continue to deal with. And we also have these boundaries, and boundaries do funny things, serious things. What we saw in southern Michigan, lower Michigan yesterday, that was perhaps thanks in part to the warm front. This is a boundary that we have that is now acting more as a warm front. I'm talking about the leading one. This cold front's also going to be very much at play, but in that sector is where we see it. Whatever develops today will carry a multitude of threats. Nashville, it's complicated there because we have round after round of storms. You're looking at storms just to your north this morning. Do they sag far enough south? Do they rob the environment of maybe some storms later in the afternoon? If that occurs, then we might not see that severe weather in the afternoon, but we'll see it first thing mid-afternoon before things would really, as you would think, get going, say around 4 or 5 o'clock. It's tough, and we're already seeing how there is a lot more activity that we have going on north of Middle Tennessee into Kentucky, but there are still indications that that environment will remain unstable. And then we head into the evening hours, and this is more classically speaking. You got the daytime heating, and then you get that cold front acting as that classic spring
coming in, right, introducing stage left.
Yeah.
You know, it is interesting because depending on the type of storms we're seeing, are they more discrete supercells or are they more clustered and whatnot? It's going to play a role in the type of weather you are dealing with and what hazards could be more significant. Either way, I would not sleep on what's happening along the warm front. As Stephen mentioned, not only could you get nasty storm after storm, you could also be getting some flooding concerns with the heavy rain. And then looking back to the west, that second area coming in later today with the cold front also wedging off to the east. There is no shortage of moisture. You can thank the southerly low-level jet that's going to be intensifying as we head in through probably the afternoon and then further into tonight. And then that moisture, that energy, that daytime heating all coming together to really fuel this very buoyant atmosphere. You talk about flooding, Stephen.
I'm
over Nashville, yeah.
I'm looking at where we have our first flash flood warning of the morning already, and this is for western Kentucky. It's just to the east of Mayfield, Kentucky, known, of course, that EF4 that devastated the town back in December of 2021. This flash flood warning is within where we have that level 3 out of 4 threat. It's just south of Paducah. So we think of what environment we have already and what we're going to have throughout the afternoon. That's the growing concern, and I really think that sleeping on the flooding threat would be ignorant on our part. I think this is a really big deal, notably because of where this boundary is, and there have been challenges as far as how far north will this boundary go. If it sets up here, I mean, all of Kentucky now under a flood watch. The St. Louis office, Marissa, mentioning that they went ahead to issue this flood watch for them because they've got values that you can measure in the atmosphere where the environment today could dump 3 inches worth of rain in no time, especially if those storms form. So that's just one of many cities we're watching.
The risk of 2 to 3 inch per hour rates within many of these storms. And then when we showed Nashville earlier, really across Tennessee and into Kentucky, you see storm after storm of that potential. So St. Louis, let's talk about you guys. You know, at 2 o'clock local time, this could be what's happening. Look at how messy it is on radar. Multiple storm chances. You have that more complex situation lining up right over the city as you head into 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. And I would say it's the time to be very tuned in with the weather. If you're picking kids up from school, if they have soccer practice after school, if you're commuting, because any of these storms could generate those very dangerous hazards.
Got them all,
with
right?
the heavy rain, which means it's going to be blinding at times too.
And it really is St. Louis points south. It's south of St. Louis, the I-70 corridor points south. That's where we have to watch for the heaviest flood threat. And St. Louis is going to be on that zone. It's really all about where this boundary sets up later today and how this low evolves.